Storytel presents Shezlez the Self-Proclaimed, written by Marko Vignjević, read by Peter Kenny. Preface. Shezlez the Self-Proclaimed came about as a result of frustration with how slow elites react to change in society. While on the face of it they are experts in their respective fields, this novella explores what happens to a society in which those same elites care more about keeping their positions intact by resorting to politicking. This inevitably leads to the suffering of the individual. It also proves the old adage that all power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. The tale of Shezlez delves into what happens to an individual who finds his way out of misfortune through those same elites, becoming a part of the system himself. All men are created equal. Some are simply more equal than others. Oftentimes, this is precisely what moves an individual into action. But more often than not, he firstly has to be tested by the powers that be in order for them to gauge his suitability for joining the upper echelons of society. As Goethe said, there is no greater slave than a man who thinks he is free. And it is precisely wherein lays the problem, in the waiting. For when we are given a promise, more often than not, we tend to hold on to it in a greater degree of zeal than the ones who made the promise. Marko Vignjević, Belgrade, Serbia, July 2020. Chapter 1. Word went around town that the authorities were organising the issuing of family tree information to interested persons free of charge. This sparked Shezlez's interest, for he was born out of wedlock, and only after his birth did his parents marry. Meditating on the notion that he would learn something about his ancestors, Shezlez quickly found himself in a queue at the municipality headquarters, among countless others, where chaos reigned unchallenged by any kind of neighbourly solidarity. Of late, he had found it even harder to spend his time at home, despite it being the dead of winter. Queuing at the municipality headquarters, Shezlez felt his spine cringe from the cold. The woman at the counter window yelled, "Next!" at his turn, and he took the last step towards the counter and handed over his ID card. The clerk stood up from her workstation and disappeared behind her superior's office door. After that brief pause, she returned and asked Shezlez to follow her back to her superior's office. Following this course of events, and himself not knowing why, for Shezlez didn't ask any questions, he quietly followed the woman to a plain-looking door on which she proceeded to knock. "You may go, Irma," said the man to the clerk, and gestured to Shezlez to sit down. The conversation was short. The man informed Shezlez that they had not managed to find any information regarding his family. Furthermore, the man added that there was no trace of any of his ancestors in their system. It was as if Shezlez didn't exist. The man returned Shezlez's ID card and kept on apologising until the rather confused Shezlez left his office. On his way out of the building, Shezlez kept thinking about what had just transpired. He couldn't believe that they were unable to find any trace of his ancestors. Truth be told, it made him somewhat angry, and it was in this fit of anger that a deviant thought crossed his mind in a hertz. As he headed back home, the long way round, for he wanted to walk, he began noticing homeless people around him, and he thought about what it would be like to end up alone, with no one to take care of him. This he imagined in the distant future of when he would grow old, but still. Walking through the snow, Shezlez realised that he was an unknown quantity, that he could make of himself whatever he wished, and proceed from there anew. Ominous clouds began to gather overhead, so he rushed home. If anything, he found out that, as far as the system was concerned, he didn't exist. All that he had was his ID card, and it was the only document by which the authorities could identify him if need be. Wanting to test this theory, Shezlez made an about-turn at the entrance of his building and went on his way to the police station. It began to snow, so he quickened his pace. The sidewalks were slippery, but that didn't slow him down. Unlike the municipality headquarters, there was no crowd at the police station. The building seemed
Sample complete. Ready to continue?